There are mornings when you wake up already tired, not tired from sleep, but tired from something older than yesterday, a weariness that lives in the chest, that has no clear name, that follows you through breakfast and into the first hour of the day before you have even had a chance to speak a single word. You lie there, and without meaning to, the mind begins. It replays what was said. It rehearses what might be said. It calculates risks that have not yet arrived and wounds that may never come. And somewhere in the quiet of that early light, a question forms that you might never say out loud. Why, after everything I have done, after everything I've managed and survived and carried, does it still feel like this? Why does the world feel like something I'm always bracing against instead of something I'm allowed to simply live inside? You're not alone in this. Millions of people begin their days this way, not in crisis, not in collapse, but in that particular kind of exhaustion that comes from being always slightly ahead of the present moment, always somewhere between what happened and what might happen next, never quite landing in the breath that is actually moving through the body right now. The mind scans for danger. The shoulders rise before the alarm even sounds. The jaw tightens. The stomach holds itself like a fist. And all of this happens before a single real problem has even appeared, because the mind has been trained, slowly and without ceremony, to treat uncertainty itself as the threat. This is not a character flaw. This is not weakness. This is what happens when a person has spent years in a culture that rewards constant readiness and that calls relentlessness a virtue, that whispers, sometimes gently and sometimes not, that to rest is to fall behind, that to stop is to lose, that peace is something you earn after the work is done, and the work somehow is never quite done. You have internalized a pace that belongs to a machine, not to a human being. And your body, faithful and honest as it always is, has been paying the price in ways you may have learned to ignore. But something in you is still listening. Something in you opened this, sat with these words, allowed itself to be found by this moment, and that is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. If you find yourself returning to this kind of reflection again and again, searching for something steadier to stand on, consider staying close. Subscribe so that whenever you need this quieter voice, it will be there waiting for you. There is an ancient teaching, simple enough to fit in a single breath. Suffering does not come from what is happening. It comes from the resistance to what is happening. The Buddhist tradition does not ask you to pretend that life is easy. It does not ask you to smile through difficulty or to manufacture gratitude you do not feel. It asks something far more honest and far more difficult. It asks you to look at what is actually here in this moment without adding a story about what it means, without reaching backward into regret or forward into fear, without deciding in advance that this moment must be fought or fixed before you are allowed to breathe freely again. This is the path toward peace, not a path that removes difficulty from your life, but one that changes your relationship to it so profoundly that difficulty loses its power to pull you under. And it begins, as so many true things do, with something so small you might almost dismiss it. The breath, not as a technique, not as a performance, not as something you do correctly or incorrectly. The breath is an anchor, the one thing that exists only now, that cannot live in yesterday or tomorrow, that is always, always moving in the present moment. When the mind spirals, and it will spiral because that is what minds do, the breath is the rope you can reach for. Not to stop the spiral by force, because force only tightens what it grabs, but to give attention somewhere to land, to inhale slowly and feel the air fill the chest, and to exhale slowly and feel the shoulders just slightly, just enough, begin to release. This is not a trick. This is the body being reminded that it is safe right now in this moment, regardless of what the mind is narrating above it. The nervous system listens to the breath in a way it does not listen to reassuring thoughts. Breathe slowly, and the body begins to believe it. Breathe slowly, and the gap between impulse and response, the gap where wisdom lives, begins to widen. In that gap, you are no longer simply reacting. You are, for the first time in perhaps a very long time, choosing. The invitation is not to breathe perfectly. The invitation is simply to remember the breath again and again and again. Each time you return to it is a small act of presence. Each return is enough. From that small place of stillness, something else becomes possible. Yeah, and it is one of the most quietly revolutionary things you can learn to do. You can begin to question the story, not the situation, not the facts, but the meaning you are adding to them. The mind is a story-making machine. It takes what happens and immediately begins constructing a narrative around it, about what it means for you, about who you are, about what's going to happen next, about whether you are enough, whether you are falling behind, whether the thing that feels fragile is about to break. These stories feel like truth. They feel urgent and important and completely real. But Buddhist wisdom offers a distinction that can change everything. A thought is not a fact. A story is not reality. When you learn to recognize the difference, to catch yourself and say quietly and without self-judgment, and I notice I'm telling a story right now, the story loses some of its grip. It does not disappear. You are not trying to silence the mind. You are only stepping back from it far enough to see it clearly, the way you can see the whole shape of a wave when you are not being pulled under by it. And from that small distance, you begin to see which thoughts are carrying you forward and which ones have been carrying you nowhere for a very long time. You begin to loosen what does not need to be held so tightly. Not by force, not by pushing away, simply by seeing clearly, and in seeing, finding the first quiet degrees of freedom. Seeing clearly also means becoming honest about what is yours to carry and what never was. And this is perhaps one of the most exhausting sources of suffering in modern life, the belief that you are responsible for outcomes that are not and have never been within your control. You can speak honestly, and you cannot control how your words land. You can love deeply, and you cannot control whether love is returned in the form you hoped for. You can prepare with care, and you cannot prevent the unexpected. Trying to control what lies outside your influence is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. The effort is real, the result is nothing, and you are left emptier than before. This is not surrender. This is not indifference. This is the quiet, radical act of returning your attention to what is actually yours. Your effort, your honesty, your presence in this moment, in the quality of care you bring to what is directly in front of you. A tree does not grip the ground more tightly when the wind comes. It bends, and because it bends, it remains standing. This is not weakness. This is intelligence shaped by thousands of years of knowing what holds and what breaks. Let the wind take what was never yours. What remains is lighter and truer. And in that lightness, something beautiful begins to grow. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have changed how you are meeting them. Difficulty does not disappear from a life lived this way. The river still encounters its rocks, but the river does not stop. The river does not harden itself in outrage at the presence of the stone. The river finds its way around, through, between, not because it is weak, but because it understands. And in whatever way water understands anything, that persistence and fluidity together are stronger than resistance alone. Challenges begin to look different when you stop fighting their presence. They are not proof that something has gone wrong with your life. They are the shape that growth takes. They are where patience is actually learned, where resilience is not read about but built, where you discover, slowly and usually when you least expect it, that you are more capable than the frightened part of your mind was willing to believe. The invitation is not to be grateful for suffering. The invitation is to stop letting suffering be the only thing you see. What else is here? This is the question that gratitude, practiced honestly, teaches you to ask. And not the gratitude of forced positivity, not the performance of contentment that denies real pain. The quiet, clear-eyed recognition that even in days that are heavy, something is still here. This breath moved. The cup of tea was warm. Light came through a window and fell on the floor in a way that has never happened in exactly that way before and will never happen again. These things are small, but they are real. And the mind that has been trained to see only what is missing, only what is broken, only what has not yet been fixed, that mind will pass over them without a second thought and spend its energy instead on futures that have not arrived and pasts that cannot be changed. Gratitude is the practice of returning attention to what is actually present. It does not require that everything be good. It only requires honesty, the honest recognition that not everything is gone. Something is still here, and something still being here is not a small thing. It is, in the most literal sense, your life. If this reflection has offered you even a moment of steadiness, of permission to exhale, stay close, subscribe, and let this be a space you return to whenever the noise grows too loud and you need a quieter voice to find your way back, and the voice that matters most, the one you will never be able to fully escape, and the one you would do well to stop fighting and begin befriending, is the one that lives inside you, the inner voice, the constant narrator, the one that speaks when you make a mistake, when you fall short of what you expected of yourself, when the comparison arrives uninvited and sets up residence in your chest. And for many people, this voice is not kind. It has learned the language of judgment and pressure and not enough. It repeats old sentences that no longer belong to you. Sentences you may have absorbed from other people's fear long before you had any say in the matter, and it will continue to speak. You cannot silence it, but you can change how you respond to it. The same understanding you would offer to someone you love. The patience, the gentleness, the acknowledgement that trying and failing is still trying, that struggle is not the same as worthlessness, that understanding is also available for yourself. Not as an exception, not as something to be earned after enough suffering, as a beginning. You are allowed to speak kindly to yourself. You are allowed to say, "This is difficult, and I am still here," and that counts for something. A seed does not berate itself for not yet being a tree. It simply does what it can in the conditions it has and trusts the process that knows more than the seed does. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are in the middle of becoming, and the middle deserves as much gentleness as the beginning or the end. None of this happens in isolation. The people around you, the conversations you enter, the environments you inhabit, all of it is shaping you in ways both visible and invisible. This is not reason for anxiety. It is reason for discernment. You do not need to make dramatic changes. You do not need to cut people from your life with harshness or reorganize everything at once. But you are allowed, you are in fact invited to notice what leaves you feeling lighter and what leaves you feeling depleted. To choose, where choice is available, the conversations that build rather than drain. to seek out the company of people who remind you that growth is possible, that warmth is available, that you are not alone in the desire to live with more peace and less noise. The Buddha called these companions Kalyana Mitta, spiritual friends, friends of the good. They are not perfect people, they are simply people who are also trying to live with more awareness, more kindness, more honesty. And being near them, even briefly, even in small ways, changes something in you that no amount of solitary effort can quite reach. The internal and the external are not separate. Your inner world shapes what you bring to the people around you, and the people around you shape what becomes possible in your inner world. Tend to both with care. Clear what clouds the space. Create room for what is steadying, for what is true, for what is quietly alive with possibility. This is not a list of requirements. None of what has been said here is a standard to be met or a test to be passed. These are not demands. They are doors, 7 of them, 7 quiet openings into a way of moving through life that asks less of you than the way you have been living and gives more than you may currently believe is available. You do not need to walk through all of them today. You do not need to begin at the beginning. You can simply begin with one breath, with one moment of noticing the story before believing it, with one small act of setting down something you were never meant to carry alone, with one honest word of kindness spoken inward to the part of you that has been trying quietly and often invisibly for a very long time. Peace is not something that arrives when everything is finally in order. Peace is what becomes available when you stop waiting for everything to be in order before you allow yourself to breathe. It is here, in the ordinary minutes of an ordinary day, in the space between one breath and the next, in the moment you remember that you are not your thoughts, that you are not your fears, that you are not the worst thing you have ever done or the most frightening thing you have ever imagined. You are the awareness that is here right now, reading these words, still breathing, still capable of being moved by something quieter and truer than the noise. That is enough. That has always been enough. If you want to keep finding your way back to this kind of quiet, subscribe and let this be the voice that meets you here whenever you are ready to return.